Welcome to Bee's Travelogue, episode 41. Since all bus tickets to Gwangju on May 18th were sold out, I got a ticket on May 19th. The day before, I had gotten off the bus too late in Mokpo, and this time I got off too early. I was on my way to the May 18th Memorial Monument, which is quite far outside of Gwangju. When I heard the word entrance, I jumped off the bus, but it was the entrance to the general area, not to the monument itself. Like the day before, I walked for about 2 miles until I found the real entrance, but I enjoyed the walk and took pictures of what I saw along the way. The May 18th Memorial Monument is an effort by the Korean people to not forget what happened on May 18th, 1980. Please pause here and read the information. I had seen the K-drama Youth of May and was somewhat familiar with the events. I highly recommend that drama to anyone who is interested in the democracy movement in South Korea. Because it was the day after the anniversary, there were still a lot of things happening and a lot of groups were visiting the memorial. A young Chinese student introduced himself to me and asked if I wanted to share a meal with him. He had been given the food by someone else and wasn't sure whether it was okay to eat it there. I wasn't really sure either and didn't really want to eat any food that I didn't know where it came from. So we just chatted for a little bit. He told me how he got to Gwangju and was studying there. He also told me how his own family in China had been persecuted. His grandmother was forced to stand all day bent over touching the floor as a form of torture. His own father had been at Tiananmen Square, but not on the day when so many students were killed, or he said he probably would not be here today. It was a stark reminder that the fight for democracy in Korea and China and around the world requires a lot of sacrifice. These are the faces of some of the people who lost their lives in South Korea. I felt like it was my duty to stop at every grave and look at every face. It felt like it wouldn't be respectful to leave anyone out. There were so many graves, and seeing all these faces really brought home how terrible this event had been. How the Korean government had cracked down on its own people and the military had shot and killed so many innocents, including very young children. The music in the video clip is from a loudspeaker playing across the cemetery. After seeing the cemetery, I walked into the memorial hall, which was covered in photographs of the people who lost their lives. From the memorial hall, I went to the museum. The museum contained artifacts from the people who died. It showed guns and bullets, rocks stained with blood, flags stained with blood, and it had lots and lots of information about what happened each day of the democracy movement in May 1980. In the beginning, the government covered up what happened. For several years, there was no recognition, no justice. Just like in America today, the Korean government was trying to cover up what was happening and trying to blame it on the people. It wasn't until the student movement of 1987, where more people were killed, that finally the Korean government had to admit that it had been at fault. Finally, all the military leaders and the president of the country were brought to justice and held accountable for what they had done. I hope the same will happen in America in the near future. It was after lunchtime when I took the bus back to downtown Gwangju and got off at Chonam National University. Having worked at a university for over 20 years, I was familiar with walking around university campuses, and I'm always curious to see how the campuses in different countries differ from my own university. What I've found is that universities across the world, no matter which country, are very, very similar in structure. Chonam National University had many professors and students that were involved in the 1980 movement. Because it was the day after the anniversary, the university too had temporary memorials. There were photos and signs that explained which professors and students had been involved and how they had lost their lives. It was a beautiful sunny day, so I kept walking around the university and just taking pictures of the different buildings and enjoying the sunshine. Each building looked unique, and there was artwork to look at on the sidewalks and in between the buildings. I finally headed back to the bus depot and took the bus back to Namak. One week later, on May 25th, I took the bus to Gochang. Once again, I walked from the bus depot to the castle. But first, I stopped at my Thai store and bought more chili peppers. I also saw durian, jackfruit, and pineapple snacks. It felt nice coming back to a town that I felt familiar with, and it was fun walking through the market once again. Other than the much-needed chili peppers, I came back to Gochang because I hadn't spent as much time as I wanted in the castle. When I got close to the castle, I heard music and laughter and came across a small festival. This time I saw these glass cases with scenes from Korean life in and around the Gochang Castle. Here you can see the vessels holding those scenes. I walked through the stone main entrance and took a picture in front of the gate. Gochang is not very known, but it really is a very cute little town, and I enjoyed spending my time there. The castle wall next to the entrance is very steep and there's no railing. After walking straight up, there's a square promontory from which you have a beautiful view over the city and the mountains behind. Walking along the wide city wall, you get to the eastern gate. I had walked along the outer wall before during my earlier visit to Gochang, so this time I cut through the forest to see the buildings inside. I also headed straight to the bamboo forest and found the official entrance gate into the forest and lots of pathways. Aside from my visit to Thailand, I had never seen bamboo before, so I was really fascinated by the way it looked and grew around the regular trees. I had watched several K-dramas with bamboo forests and Lee Min-ho riding on a white horse through a bamboo forest, so for me being here was really fun. The same was true walking among these buildings, just looking at the structure, the interior rooms, the wooden floors, and the special doors and windows that could be opened to let fresh air in the summertime was really interesting. As I was walking around this area, I discovered signs that said that the K-drama Love in the Moonlight with Park Bo-gum had been filmed here. Park Bo-gum was already a favorite actor of mine. I'd seen him in Reply 1988, Record of Youth, and several movies. So as soon as I went home from Gochang, I started watching Love in the Moonlight, and I was very impressed once again by Park Bo-gum's acting skills. It's a fun show to watch if you're trying to get into K-drama or if you haven't seen it yet. I'm one of those tourists that wants to see every corner of everything. So I'm not just walking to the front of the building, but I'm walking in the back, taking pictures, trying to imagine what it must have been like to live here and look across the valley to the building on the other side. Did people wave to each other? Did they send signals? What did they do all day? As I was walking around taking pictures, I saw that there was a class or school group walking around. So I was trying to beat them to each building so that I could have pictures without any children in them. As you can see, Koreans were building most of their houses and temples out of wood. And so that of course left them vulnerable to fire. Most of the buildings I saw in Korea had been rebuilt in the 1970s or 1980s. Many had been burnt down by the Japanese during the war, and others had fallen victim to accidental fires. At first I thought it was a little bit sad that everything was so new, and I do think it's sad, but at the same time, Koreans don't have a choice. If we want to know what life used to be like and what the buildings used to look like, then rebuilding is the only way. This used to be the castle's jail, and if you've seen old K-dramas, you've seen these kind of cells many times. Outside the castle were very old stupas, several hundred years old. And here again are the statues of the women walking around the castle with a rock on their head. Gochang itself is very pretty with flowers on the bridges and along the water. I stopped for a burger lunch and took the bus back to Namak. Please join me for my special trip to Gwangju, the ancient capital. Thanks for watching.